Hey guys, welcome to another reoccurring episode on TRT the Podcast. This is going to be our Q&A. It's going to be popping up here and there. We've had some people throw in some questions and we're going to be answering them one by one.
This episode of TRT the Podcast is brought to you by Connect, fully electric tractors.
G'day guys, welcome back to TRT the Podcast. Today I'm going to go through my 5 most useful attributes in order for me to have become useful to horses, useful to horse people, and of course useful to myself. These are my most important attributes that have allowed me to have an online training, a successful online training business, to allow me to have successful clinics, masterclasses, demonstrations all over the world, to be able to help students and other trainers at world-class levels in all different disciplines, to allow myself to also be able to compete at a high level, but also just have a good connection and understanding of my own horses. I'm going to run through the 5 really quick, and then we're going to unpack each one of them. We could go into hours of detail on each of the topics, but I just want to be able to give you some fast dot points, something you can really take and eat up and get going in your brain and be able to create your own analogies and your own ideas and relate it to your own life. So here are the 5. Finding a good mentor. Learning the whole program. No one knows all, but everyone knows something. Self-discovery and self-improvement. Teach and share with others. So these are the 5, and we're going to unpack them now and go into a little bit of detail of what these attributes have meant to me and how they've helped me in being able to do all the things that I've been able to achieve with horses. So first of all, guys, finding a good mentor. There are many factors, of course, in finding a good mentor, and quite often we choose maybe people that are famous, someone that's had a lot of success, achieved a lot of accolades. They may be someone that's had a lot of success in training students to be successful in your chosen discipline. We often maybe choose people that are close in our environment. It might be local to us. They live down the street, so it's handy. It might be a good job opportunity that pays really well. There's many factors in which we can choose or come across a mentor. Actually, none of the above are of any interest in the end. What matters is that you have a connection with that person, with the person you choose to be your mentor. It doesn't really matter at the end what kind of level they're on. What matters is that you get along. So if you're going to be able to choose a mentor for the long term, it has to be a person that innately fits you. Someone that you can spend long hours of the day with and it goes smoothly. You can connect on many different levels, both with interests, both emotionally. You have respect for each other, and you're then able to connect in a way that it's going to benefit and be beneficial to each other. So not always thinking, I need to go to this person because everybody's going to that person. Of course, it's important that the mentor you choose has the information that is going to be useful to you. But in the end, sometimes we are picking that person based on superficial things, and we don't take the time to be able to feel if this is a match. Is it going to be a mentor that innately fits us? And therefore you're going to be able to build a relationship, and you're going to be able to build a friendship and a connection with that person to be able to go longer than a 3-month period. You're going to be able to stay with that person and be able to exchange ideas. First of all, it'll be the one-way street. You'll find a mentor that's giving you all the guidance and all the mentorship and all the teachings and all the learnings. And as you go along and you collect ideas, you will start to be able to workshop these things together. And you have to be able to have a person that gives you energy, that when you're in that space, you want to connect, you want to talk about topics, and you find yourself having energy while talking to that person. In the beginning, it might be that you're just asking all the questions, but it has to be a person that you feel you want to be able to open up and ask questions. You know that they're going to be able to feed you some answers. You know they're going to be the kind of person that's going to create interest and drive and motivation for seeing possibilities in the future. And quite often, if we go to that person that our parents say, oh, that person's done well there down the road, it's handy, you should just go there. You can start as a working student and earn some bucks. But quite often we end up going into that space, and if the connection's not there, we end up spending a lot of time being isolated, avoiding that person, not wanting to disappoint that person, and then you don't have that real optimal time of growth. And in the early stages, the level of motivation that's created by the place and the environment you put yourself in often determines how far that's going to take you. Does it bring you to the next level? Is it going to further your interest in your passion and what you want to do? Or does the situation maybe start to turn you off the path that was maybe meant for you, but you ended up in the wrong place because you made the wrong choices, or you chose the mentor for the wrong reasons, and then we kind of lose traction and lose our way. So, number 2, learning the whole program. All of these topics will intertwine in some way. They will give information about the last topic that also leads into the next topic. The learning the whole program has many different facets. One of the most important things about learning the whole program is it takes time in learning someone's program. When you have a mentor that you've chosen for what you think is the right reasons, that may change as you go along, but you have to give that time to be able to feel if this is the right person. You have to be able to give it time to learn the whole program. Relationship to time, therefore, is really important. We, of course, live in a world where there's a lot of instancy. We're used to being fed more and more on instant gratification. If we, for instance, want something, we can just go on our phones and we can order it, and tomorrow it's there. And our relationship to time can be altered in relation to something we set ourselves to do. So we might think we're going to go to this person, we start to learn, we start to find out a little bit about their program, how they go about things. And when we can order something today and it's here tomorrow, you may think then 3 months I've spent with this person is a long time. But of course, there's a very long process in starting to understand and become familiar with somebody's program that's taken them maybe 20, 25, 30, 40 years to learn. And of course, you've made decisions to choose that mentor for certain reasons. They give you energy, so you know there's a depth to that person to be able to feed you and to guide you as a mentor. So you have to give that situation time. You have to give also yourself time to be able to go through and learn the whole program. And I'll explain the risks of not doing that in a moment, where we can end up being if we are dipping in and not spending the time to learn the whole program. But firstly, one of the most important things of learning the whole program is when you start somewhere, you're in the foundation part, you're in the beginning part of learning just the main building blocks of how to begin something, how to understand where to position yourself, what not to do, what is step 1, what is step 2. And of course, these initial things in the foundation are often links, and they are the basis of where you're going to end up in a few years' time when you're at a higher level and you're able to be more equipped, you have more skills, you become more useful, you become more competent. And when you first start and you're gathering this foundation, you want to give yourself time to really know all the aspects of a foundation. What are the techniques? What is the feeling? What is my perspective of how I'm managing myself? How is the horse, for instance, reading my body language? How am I able to understand all aspects of laying down a good foundation, both for my horse and myself, that's going to set me up for later on when I start to learn intermediate, medium, advanced things. And quite often when we go through a certain program, we will get to certain stages, or we may start out in the beginning thinking, I don't know what this is good for, and you have not yet seen the pathway of where it's leading to. But as you stay in it and as you learn it and that becomes a very solid skill, you'll get further down the line, you get deeper into the program, you spent more time, and then you start to think, that's why we were doing that. Now I can make the link. Now I make the connection. Now my skills have a continuity. I'm not just collecting some splinter skills that are not coinciding with making some symmetry, reason, understanding of how to be able to get somewhere. And that leads me to the next thing of what can happen when we don't have a good relationship to time. When we start to think, I'm going to go to that person because they've won a lot of gold medals in this discipline and that bit I want to learn. And you go there for a 2-week period as a working student and you end up being a fruit picker. And when you're a fruit picker and you go to this person and collect them things, and you go to this person and collect some things, and you don't have a foundation, what you end up with is a basket full of rotten fruit. So the idea of learning the program is that you grow roots. You have a foundation, something to be able to follow, something to come back to, something that becomes your own source of nutrients, of stability, of understanding, of awareness. And then when you go out and you think, I see some fruit there, can this survive on my tree of knowledge? Can I feed this piece of information through the roots that I've developed through creating my solid foundation that I've spent time on doing? And the importance then of being able to grow roots is you start to be able to source through feeling where your foundation and where your roots are, where you've come from. You start to be able to feel the right fruit that is going to blossom and is going to feed what you already have from your foundation up through your tree into your leaves. And you start to pick the right things that are going to help you grow further. The other important thing about learning the whole program is when you've connected with your mentor over a long period of time, in the beginning, you start to be able to have the conversations where you are guided into picking the right fruit that's going to fit the foundation. You're going to be guided in conversations about how you have to improve what you're learning better. And then once you've spent that time and you've learnt the whole program and you really have a good foundation and you've grown roots and you're not a fruit picker with a rotten basket full of everybody else's ideas that don't connect to everything, when you have that connection, you've spent that time, when you start to branch out and you come back to the base, to your mentor, you can start to share ideas and you will have an understanding with that mentor that becomes a colleague, that becomes a friend. You can share ideas and have conversations on a level that you may not be able to have with anybody else. And this is really important in being able to understand the things in your life that feed you, that also innately fit you, because you've spent the time in order to really learn, understand, feel, and know and live those things. And when you've been through that and you've learnt the whole program and you've done that with somebody for a long period of time, you have a different level of connection with that person, a different level of understanding of your skills, your passion, the things that give you energy, the zest for life. And when you have someone you can really share that with, This is going to be the fuel in the times where it gets difficult, where you're a little bit down, where the natural struggles of life start to challenge you, where you have resistance in that next goal, in that next venture, in that next business idea. And then you can come back to that. You can come back to that foundation, those roots, that connections you've made, and be able to then discuss again with your mentor the things that he's maybe been through or that he hasn't been through, but when you explain it to him, he understands fully the position you're in, and you're able to have again that support. So those things are really important in the understanding of the relationship of time, going back to again finding the right mentor and staying there to learn the whole program. So that brings us to number 3, which again, as we go through, will link itself to the previous one and also to the following one. The next one being, no one knows all, but everybody knows something. The important thing to remember about that particular phrase, and I can go into great detail in explaining the basis of what that means, but I will just go through some more points that's going to give maybe more relevance to your own life. As we're going through this, just take time, maybe press the pause button when you hear something to be able to think, oh yeah, how does that relate to my situation? That you can really gather some useful ideas and thoughts through this. So no one knows all, but everybody knows something. Coming directly after that in my mind, when I say that line, is meaning and value is forever changing with perspective. So meaning and value, the meaning of something and the value of something, information, knowledge, an idea, is forever changing with the perspective of where you're currently sitting, or where you currently have your information, how far you are on your journey, whichever space you are in the particular time in your life. And I reflect back when I'm going through periods of great learning, of great experimentation, being back in Australia and doing 100 horses a year on my own. And the things that I'd learned from the horses in that time, in many years of isolation, not having the possibility to share ideas or be heavily exposed to a lot of other trainers and masterclasses and going to clinics and going to competitions and not having internet and YouTube and things like this, no social media, not being able to see millions of people from any corner of the globe doing amazing things. This was all a secret to me. And so I spent a lot of time in the lab, letting the horses prove to me in my current situation that this was the way in order for me to be successful. I had a successful business. I could start young horses. I could help problem horses. I got to the stage where I was thinking there isn't a horse on the planet with 4 legs that I can't get to a place that is happy and able to be a riding horse. There wasn't a horse in the world that had a problem that I was not able to help get to a relaxed and happy state without any undesired behaviors. So I went through a period where I was convinced that this is what horses needed. And what I was doing through those long times of isolation and just working with the horses was I had this idealized process in my mind of what worked. And I had no comparison to that. And when I first came to Europe and I started to give some demonstrations in clinics, I had people that would come to the clinics and say, oh, you're just doing this and this and this. They would put a word or a methodology or an idea or a horse behavioral scientist theory behind what I was doing. And of course, I was not very exposed to that. And I hadn't done the research widely in exploring those things. So immediately I thought, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. they don't understand what I'm doing. They haven't been with enough horses to really know what this type of horse needs with this situation. And then as I got years down the track, I'd sort of revisited some of those things. I'd done some research, or I had numbers of people say the same things. And I had to then start to think, well, what are they talking about here? Is there some legitimacy to this? I have to look into this further. And then I found further on down the track, and this continues to happen in my life, where I now hear something that pricks my ears up and I have to go in and I have to read everything about it, watch all the videos, read all the books, find out everything there is to know about this topic that may be not quite the way I do it, or it's said in a different way, or there's a different outcome, there's a different result, there's a different feel, there's a different look. And it was in that process that back then I was thinking one thing, and now I think in some situations, if I can remember correctly, my memory serves me right, that actually those people were right. They were totally correct. They were probably actually seeing more of what I was doing and the situation that that horse was in that moment of me giving a demonstration than I did. And that made me reflect back into the meaning and the value of someone's information, or the way they were reflecting on what I was doing was just due to their perspective. And the way I saw it was due to my perspective and what I'd been experiencing. So this started to open my mind more and not be really critical first on how someone was seeing something. So much so that I learned that I had to have the skill of being a better listener than a talker. And remember to only listen even before you think. Because what you don't want to happen is that everything is deflected by your first filter. Maybe your current thought of the time, because you had a horse yesterday that has gotten you into a trend of seeing that process working, or you've been through a string of experiences where you've been able to have a positive result. So that is in the forefront of your mind. Somebody comes up with another idea or a suggestion or even a criticism of what you're doing, and you have to first think, be able to listen, and listen fully before you think. Don't let your first filter in your current situation deflect or give an altered or a biased meaning to the information that's coming in, because this is going to limit you in the end. Somebody else's critique, positive, negative, indifferent, is information in the end. It's going to give perspective. It's going to give reflection. It's going to give ideas. And if we let it go through the filter of our own idealized opinion, however that idea, that feeling, even positive excitement about the way you do something, if that's going to alter the information's coming in, you can't get the most benefit from that situation. So further your own knowledge by listening and putting it up for reflection and comparison. And remembering that the knowledge you have can only be greater if you put it up against the knowledge of others. So meaning, okay, I'm doing this in this way, and this gives me this sort of result. And this person is also working towards this situation, but they go about it completely differently. Is there a step or a refinement or an angle or a perspective or a feeling or a conversation or an interpretation by the horse that is different than mine, that could be a source to my roots to give me a better understanding of what I'm doing, a better feeling, an idea of I've been down that path and that's reminded me been down that path and that didn't work for me. It's really working for this person, but it doesn't innately fit me. So being able to give yourself a deeper understanding of your own knowledge, your own perspective, and that will lead to revelations in your own work, in your own feeling, in your own connections, your own conversations with your horse. And it's going to help you develop in a way that fits you better. You're not going to have the filters on, the blinkers on. You're not going to be going through a maze. You're going to be able to feel your way through a situation and optimize your possibilities of the information that you can gain along the way. So to be able to view someone else's criticism of your own methods of doing something, try to do that as what we talked about in the beginning as a perspective. They are, of course, seeing it from their perspective. And being able to put yourself in their shoes means if we're creating something and we're building something and we only see it from our own position and we never walk to where that person's standing and see the view from the other side, then we can only ever end up with one type of result. And for horses, what's really important is we have to always be adaptable. We have to always be flexible. We have to be, as Bruce Lee used to say, like water, formless, shapeless. So to be able to have skills that stretch far beyond a certain breed, far beyond a certain discipline, far beyond only helping horses, but also helping horse people and also helping yourself in horses and your chosen discipline and your craft and your passion, but helping yourself in your own life in all different aspects, career, relationships, family, all of these things. We have to see criticism as a perspective and be able to learn from it. So guys, this brings us to number 4, self-discovery and self-improvement. Of course, this is also a very large topic, but I've tried to, in this little podcast, focus on the opening up of the idea of discovery and being able to put ourselves in different places and spaces to be able to give different perspective, different ideas and understandings of self. So the self-discovery and self-improvement is the kind of pathway for me to be able to participate in my craft. Horses for me is about self-development, self-improvement, and self-reflection. It is that internal goal that is actually never meant to be met. And that gives me a kind of comfort that horses for me will be a continuing life discovery of myself. How can I learn about myself through the reflection of the energy and relationships I get from my horses? And the way I've been able to do that best of late is to be able to not only look at myself in my chosen discipline and in my craft and in my career and in my work, but also in the environments that are not involved in horses. So be able to have this self-reflection in situations where I would go to dinner maybe with my wife and with a group of her friends. And how do I respond in that situation? Am I able to show an open, pure, honest side of myself in that situation, the same as I would want to do with my horse? I talk about it all the time with my students, and I talk to myself all the time when I have a horse that is troubled, that I want to show a very honest, open reflection of myself in that moment. I want the projection of self to be positive and to be able to be measured and felt, and I want it to be not offensive, and I don't want it to be a secret and unheard. I want it to be accepted and felt in a way that is positive, that it gives energy, that it gives a good feeling to the person or the horse or the being that I'm having the interaction with. And I find when I'm in my element, in what I do best, of course, that is when I feel the most comfortable. But when I get into a situation where I start to try to have an awareness of my physiology, my body language, my thoughts, my energy, the sensation, my vibration in my body, when I go to something that maybe is not giving me a whole lot of energy, the first thought in my mind through my first filter is going to be that this is not going to be a situation that's going to fill me with enthusiasm. But then I try to have self-improvement in that moment. I try to show up as my best self. Not to say going to dinner with my wife and her friends is not an exciting thing, reflecting back on that. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're doing something where you feel you're not confident, or you're not feeling full of energy or inspiration, you're not able to feel that you are connected to self, you get too much in your head, thinking about this situation, I have to go and have this meeting with this person. What are the things, when you're in your optimal environment, that are really working for you? What are the things that come natural? What are the things that bring you energy? What are the ways in which you feel like the projection of yourself is received positively from everybody? And then be able to go through that process of self-discovery. So how am I in that situation when I have to go to a meeting or a difficult conversation? One of the many things we all have in our lives that come up and create resistance. How do we go into that? And what are the things we need to bring to that in order to have self-improvement in that area, away from our chosen discipline or craft where we're very comfortable? And what you learn in that space about trying to develop yourself in an environment where you're not so comfortable, a situation where you're not so comfortable, is you allow your strengths to work for you, and you learn to be able to bring up your strengths, to be able to bring out yourself in all the situations that are challenging, that are difficult. And then when you have to rise to the occasion, you're learning through the self-discovery and the self-improvement of a difficult situation, you're able to call on those things. One, at a higher level, when you're in your comfort zone, because you've gone out into an environment where you're not comfortable, and you've gathered the ingredients necessary to be able to create more of an optimal feeling of energy and self and motivation and excitement and all the things that create a positivity and an energy around you in that not so familiar, not so practiced, not so confident environment. And then when you come back to your confident environment, you've honed, you've sharpened all your tools that are working for you, and then you come into your environment where you're very comfortable, and then all of a sudden you've gone the next level. You can serve your horse better, the horse people better, yourself better. And so that element can be very empowering, not only in your craft, but it starts to spread into other areas you maybe didn't realize you weren't confident in. And when you start to apply a formula and a system, then you start to excel and grow and feel comfortable and have more energy in all of the areas. And you start to find you have less moments where you have the, I have to go and do that. Oh, I'm not looking forward to that. I'm going to put off calling that person till later. And of course, that brings the energy level down, and that affects all areas of your life. So another area in which I've gotten better at through recent years that I wasn't good at in previous years in the self-discovery and self-improvement space was being open to discuss and share weaknesses. So not only your strengths and your achievements and the positive things and what you're doing and the newest idea and the last great success and the last famous successful person you worked with, the highlight reel that you share on social media, whatever you've created, that we kind of are led in the world to push positivity. And sometimes we get into the pattern of thinking we have to say something positive to everybody to make them feel okay. We have to say or represent ourselves in a way that we're doing well, to tell others we're doing well in order to tell ourselves subconsciously that we're doing well. I know in dressage sport that quite often creating a certain persona is also part of that sport. We all know you have to follow a code of points and you try to get a higher percentage, but there's also something about earning your place and being that successful person. Being that successful person, you post certain things on social media. You post your successes. You post your wonderful, perfect relationship connection with your horse. When the sun is out the first time, you show the video of your horse in a perfect environment, grazing on the field. You show you working on your perfect body when you go to the gym. We kind of are in this environment, we're always giving the positive. I'm naturally a pleaser. Quite a number of my friends see that sometimes as a weakness. I always thought that that was part of my strength. It comes from my past. It comes from being an only child. It comes from having parents that were divorced when I was 8. It comes through a whole lot of things in my life where I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. I don't want there to be friction. I don't want there to be an argument. I don't want people to feel sad. I want them to feel good about themselves. I want them to look into a bright future for themselves. I want to be able to give tips and share things because they're the things that also give me energy. But I've also found as of late that it was also empowering to share weaknesses. Of course, this has to happen in the beginning, and did for me with doing that with people that I trust and that I'm close with. And when I share the weakness, I feel that it's going to create a certain energy and positivity. And sometimes I took a risk in doing that and found that the person shied away and the conversation sort of washed out and it didn't go anywhere. Or I found an opening in a conversation and I thought I'd reflect and share an idea that they might be able to identify with, and it was a release. And that person said, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. I also had this and this last week," and then you give them the feeling of, yeah, I also had that. And then they feel that you understand what they're feeling. And then it creates an energy, not through saying how wonderful you were or how well that's going and how my new business idea is kicking off and how all of my horses in the stable are such high quality. I never had such a stable full of champions and they're all going so well and they're learning everything. Just about every horse in the stable can learn piaffe. Just about every one of my horses will jump 160 next week. But to be able to feel you can share something with somebody that is real, also in a world that's getting more and more fake. What do you believe on the internet these days? We think about what's coming at a very rapid speed. We've already had sort of the last 10 years of social media where everyone's living everyone else's lives through a highlight reel. So what is real in reels? When you think about AI coming, what is going to be real anymore? Can you believe that that's that person's voice, that that's not just an avatar of somebody creating something? What is real anymore, So to be able to have those conversations where you reveal something real, you share something that everybody has. Nobody is going through a situation of growth and trying to get better and improve without difficulties. And when you can share those difficulties, you will find out that other people are having them too. And if you can share that situation, that creates energy, then you realize that the things that are most real, good, bad, or indifferent, are the things that help you grow the most. To be able to help the horses, to be able to help the horse people, in order to be able to help yourself, to be able to repeat the topic of this podcast again. But those are the things. And through doing that, the journeys that are hardest to travel are the ones best learned. So of course, if you think about, when you do something that comes very naturally to you, you maybe prepared a horse for a competition and that horse has an extreme talent, everything's gone really smoothly, and you went out and you did your thing and you won and it was successful. One, how much time did you have to spend in order to get to that place? How much self-discovery and self-improvement did you have to do in order to achieve that? In comparison to something that is very hard, that you had to take a hard road, that you had to spend a lot of time improving something, working on something, self-reflecting, going back, revisiting, being in the grind, failing, learning what didn't work, picking it up again, getting knocked down 7 times and getting up 8, all of those things. That is the place in where you learn and have self-discovery and self-improvement. So when I think back about stories I share with the right people, when I think about it, actually, the hard things, the things that I struggled with, I actually got the most out of when I shared them. When I shared something positive and my horse was going amazing, and a good friend went, "Good on you, happy for you, mate." And then we talk about the weather or the next thing. But if you really go deep into talking about things that are difficult, having those difficult discussions and talking about our weaknesses, that is the thing in the end that's going to feed you the most. That's the thing where you're going to find out real deep discovery, reflection with other people that have been through similar situations, sharing those ideas. And it's being able to discover how your superpowers work in other environments. When you share a story that is difficult, you're able to then relay what you've just been through. You're able to analyze it. You go through another phase of self-discovery, and then that brings you into another phase of self-improvement. When you're able to share that, and you're able to reveal your superpower, which becomes the sharing of the story and the realization of the difficulty, that is the revealing of your superpower, because it becomes a superpower. It becomes talking about your weakness, delving into it, analyzing it, sharing it with others, bringing it open. Straight away, the energy from the other person is, yeah, you're right. Not everything was easy. He went through some difficult stuff. And I really like the way he went about that. And maybe they are a good enough person to also share that thought with you. And then you realize that hardship, that difficulty, that adversity, that brought out your superpowers. And then when you tell somebody about it, you learn them. You start to realize what those superpowers are. And then discovering that aspect enables you then to bring those superpowers into your craft in all different environments. Again, the self-discovery and the self-improvement by then using those skills in a situation where you have to go for that difficult meeting. You've shared with somebody else that hardship, that adversity. You've spoken it out loud. It becomes something real. You have the realization that you went through that. You knew the tools and the strategy that you used to be able to overcome that. And you've put it out into the open. You've shared it with someone. They've reflected. They've also told you they've been through something similar. You've got some tools. You go to that next difficult situation. You've experimented in new environments and you start to apply that to situations that are more difficult. So that real self-discovery and self-improvement, the self-improvement comes from the self-discovery, of course. And all of those aspects intertwining with each other is going to help you in that ultimate progression of being able to help horses, helping horse people, and helping yourself. That's how it's worked for me. So guys, we've come to number 5. You're all sitting on the edge of your seats. You've pressed pause a million times to write down your own notes, how this is going to apply. I remember that situation. I could explore myself more here. We get to the part where I think nowadays I learn more from this than working, say, solely on my own in a particular situation. Of course, that's all learning as well. But this situation, the teach and share with others, the teaching to others, the sharing with others. Of course, I have the possibility to share with 70,000+ people on an online training. I get to share with people large audiences at big events on masterclasses, at horse expos, with live streams. I get to share by going and giving a local clinic somewhere with a federation. I'm having the possibilities to be able to share ideas and things that I'm doing with my horses, and I'm able to share and create workshops with clients and with groups. So I have those opportunities. But in the beginning, I didn't. In the beginning, I was working a lot by myself. And I was in my own mind, and I was in my own situation, isolated, only with the horses. The clients would bring them in and they would drop them off and go away, and I wouldn't see them again until the horse was ready to go home or the next stage was meant to happen. But even if you don't have an audience, the power in speaking out as a teacher, as an educator, to be able to share your ideas with the bird that is sitting on the fence in your arena, with the other horses that are standing in the field watching you work with your other horse, to be able to share ideas with someone at a dinner, to be able to write down what your strategy was on that day, the explanation, the blog, the article that nobody may ever read. The process of you creating an analogy, going back into your mind when you're not doing and thinking and executing and reciprocating and in a conversation, you're sitting, you're not in the doing. And you start to explain, relay, you start to create analogies. If I write that down, if I say that out loud, does that make sense? Is what I'm doing fitting the situation? Is what I'm doing under analysis making sense? Is that connecting to the outcome? Is that connecting to my ethics, to my morals, to the way in which I want to be working for myself? Notice I didn't say there, is it coming across in a way that other people will think that I'm successful? Or is it coming across in a way that they think I know what I'm talking about? Because in the end, that part doesn't matter. But what you will learn through the teaching, sharing with others, even if you don't have an audience, is you are giving yourself the feeling of authenticity. You are starting to describe to yourself and to somebody else that may read your scriptures later on, or you may be able to share that with a group in a masterclass, in a clinic, at your first keynote speaking, whatever it might be. But you've rehearsed that, you've practiced that. You're going into a exploration, a self-knowledge, self-discovery process through the teaching and sharing with others. And even if you don't have the opportunity, you get to practice that. You have to create analogies, thinking of an explanation of the way you do something. Why do you do that? How does that connect to what you're doing next? Does that relate or even make sense to the horse? Are we putting into them before we ask it out of them? Does the process of that make sense? Is the way I'm explaining, is what I'm doing making sense? And when we go through that process, it tells us a lot about what we're doing. It tells us whether somebody else can understand it. It tells us whether the horse is able to understand it. It tells us whether we understand ourselves. And the more we can go through this process of understanding what we're doing, how we're doing it, whether it's making sense, whether it's getting us to where we're going, it tells us more and more about the authenticity of ourselves, which leads us to the most important thing of everything we do in our life, and that is the why. Why we are doing it. The why we practice this. The why we want to teach our horse this. The why we do step 5 instead of step 1. The why we go about it with this gear and not that gear. The why we have chosen this path and this purpose to become the best version of ourselves. So that process of the teaching doesn't have to be in a normal situation where you give a lesson or you giving a clinic or giving a masterclass. You can practice these things. These are things I also practice even though I have those possibilities. And what it does is it helps me to listen to myself so that I know how people are hearing me. I am able to hear myself, feel myself, understand myself, so I can give myself the perspective of how my horse sees me, feels me, understands me. And when you're able to go through that process and understand this 360 vision of yourself, that is helping you dramatically to be able to help horses, to be able to help horse people, to be able to help yourself. This process is the formula and the skills to give you more perspective of how you're going about things. So of course, then we get into situations where we have an opportunity to teach, where we have an opportunity to explain or maybe write something. And the important part about that, about helping others, is of course, you're able to create analogies, different ways of explaining things. It makes you study the ways you're doing stuff. It helps to keep you on track. It helps you to audit what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. And it keeps us on track. It makes us sit back and analyze, well, I've been doing this on my own and I've been maybe not thinking much about it. And when I start to relay it to somebody else, actually, I would change a little bit the way in which I would approach that. The other thing about helping others is being able to see people in situations where they may be having difficulties, and then being able to put your own skills into action. So being in that situation, being able to teach and share with others means you are able to gather your tools in your craft by learning yourself from your mentors, from your practice with your horse, from your training, from your online training, from your one-on-one coaching calls with Tristan, whatever it might be. And then you're able to go to somebody else's situation and say, okay, I've got this bag of tools here, and now I see how this is going out, and I have this tool, and I have this tool. And maybe if we go about it this way, and when you start to be able to teach and help others, you're able to apply your tools. Sometimes our tools just on our own jobs have less value in comparison to when we share them with others, when we start to help others with these tools. And so that's a very important part of it. What happens when you go and you help others in different situations that are having difficulties, and you start to bring your tools together in a new environment, in a new situation, you're no longer doing self, but you're applying your tools through somebody else, through their feeling, through their perspective, through their situation, to be able to help themselves. Your tools will start to mold and transform into something else. And you get to see how your idea and your explanation through your teaching comes into that person, into that feeling, their perspective. And this is where you have to be open into realizing the topic we had before. Not everybody has all the answers, but everybody knows something. Is when you allow your tools into somebody else, not be allowing your first filter to judge that. That doesn't look how it does when I do it. That means it's wrong. Your goal is to try to get this person to do it with your expectation of what the outcome should be. No, the teaching and the sharing with others is that you share. You give them that piece of cake that you've baked a million times, and you go, oh, I love this, I love the lemon in it. And you give it to them, and they go, oh, yeah, and it's a bit strong for me. You're like, what are you talking about? It's the most delicious cake you've ever eaten. No, you have to allow that person to experience it with their own feeling, their own circumstance, their own perspective. And then you can listen. Don't let your first filter block that. Listen and see, there's another opening. They have gone about it a bit like that. There's some interesting information. I'm just gonna, that was my idea all along. Well done. Again, you are developing a skill, you're developing yourself through the teaching and sharing with others. When, of course, you come to a different situation, you may get into a situation where you think, I don't really have the answer ideally for this right away. You may have to puzzle your way through it. You may have to work with the other person, create a small collaboration, a workshop, work together in the ideas. This is also a space when you teach, you share with others, you share ideas, you bring your tools to another person that's maybe having an issue. They've got another set of tools, and then you start to bring things together, and then that brings up other inspirational things, other ideas, other perspectives, other solutions. This is, again, giving you the practice of interaction, the exchange of ideas, the infinite possibilities of growth. So being open also in those situations, not only with the collaboration with somebody else and the workshopping of something, remembering to keep open your own self-discovery in that moment. So you may come to a situation you're planning on teaching that person, being the instructor, and then that certain environment, that certain situation, you're coming to it with your tools, you get a different perspective, and allow yourself to experiment. I'm not talking about trying something you've never tried before and putting yourself and the horse and the person in a dangerous situation, but be able to have an open-minded view of the situation and allow new things to come in. You will find new phrases, new analogies, new thought patterns, new pathways, new solutions, new strategies. You can let them feel to yourself like you've had them all the time, but allow yourself to be open enough to receive those things. If you go in with the idea of, with this situation, I bring my hammer and my chisel, and that's how I do it, you will never progress past the hammer and the chisel. You'll go into your toolbox, I've only got those tools, and you start to, well, I've only got these, so this is the way we have to do it, and then it becomes a limitation. There you stop. There you don't grow anymore. There you can't help more horses, more horse people, and more for yourself. So being open in that situation and allowing yourself to see and receive the gifts, receive the words, the analogies, the phrases, the quotes, the information, the knowledge that will seemingly sometimes come from a higher being. But if you're not open to it, you will never receive it. And never receiving those things, you are doing yourself an injustice of doing all this work, earning the possibility to be able to teach someone, share with someone, be in this new environment. You are given this possibility, and then it's you yourself that limits what you can receive from it in that very moment. So guys, this is my 5. Of course, we could go on in many different directions and paths and delve deep into many little mole burrows in our explanation. But I just want to give you these points to be able to reflect on your own life, be able to be open and come up with new ideas so that you can better serve your horses, to better help others, to better help yourself.